This is the 35mm f.95. If that doesn't blow your mind, then let me explain. Hello friends and welcome back to the studio. This is Susie with Gemini Connect, and if you guys have been following our channel for a while, then you know that my partner and I, Martin, are primarily GoPro vloggers. However, that's not the only camera that we use because we like to shoot cinematic B-roll as well as take pretty photos, and so for that reason we also shoot with Fujifilm mirrorless cameras. This is the Fuji X-H1, but we also use the Fujifilm X-T3, which is being used to film this video. So we love shooting with our Fuji cameras because they look really amazing, they're really easy to use, and the photo and video quality coming out of them is just stunning. But the only restriction about shooting with Fuji is that these are APS-C or crop sensor cameras, meaning that they don't perform the best in low lighting as opposed to full frame cameras. So one of the ways that we get around this low light shooting issue is that we use fast aperture lenses, such as this 50-140 f2.8 or the 35mm f2. But the challenge of using fast aperture lenses is that they can be big and also very expensive, and we like to be as minimalist as possible when we're out shooting. So why are fast aperture lenses expensive and also highly desired? I made an entire video speaking more about aperture, so I'll leave a link in the description below, but to summarize, there are two main reasons. Number one, a fast aperture lens allows more light into the camera's sensor, so you can shoot in low lighting without the need of a flash. And number two, it allows for having a really shallow depth of field. So if you're after that really nice blurry background with lots of bokeh or bokeh, then you'll want to use a fast aperture lens to get the best results. So having an f2 lens such as this one is really handy. However, having an f.95 lens is almost unheard of. I think there are some other lenses that can shoot this fast aperture, but this is the only one that I've heard of that exists for Fujifilm. So let's talk about price. The Fujifilm 35mm f2 lens is $400 US versus the 7 Artisans 35mm f.95 lens, which is $250 US. That's kind of unheard of because normally a faster lens like the f.95 should cost a lot more than an f2 lens, but this is not a Fujifilm lens, this is made by a third party, so that's one of the ways that they're able to keep the cost down. Now if you think that a cheaper third-party lens isn't going to be on par to the real deal, well, that's not the case with this lens. This is actually a super well-built lens. It's like mostly metal and glass, and it feels really premium. It's actually really heavy when you hold it in your hand. And I really love the design. And that's saying a lot because Fujifilm lenses are also known for their design. But this lens, it actually looks a lot like certain Leica lenses. Another benefit to this lens is that it's able to cover the aperture range of this Fujifilm 35 f2 lens, so it can shoot at f2 or even f1.4 or f.95. And those are all really fast apertures and really help you shoot in low lighting as well as get that really nice creamy bokeh in your background. Now in the past, third-party lenses are known for not playing so well with certain cameras, but that's not the case with this lens. It works really flawlessly with the Fujifilm cameras. We've been shooting on it a lot with our Fujifilm X-T3 as well as the X-H1, and this lens attaches to the camera body like really simply without any friction. Some other lenses such as Viltrox, sometimes when you attach that lens to Fuji, it can get a little tight and feel a little scary, but this lens goes on really smoothly. And once this lens is attached to the camera, the photos and videos that come out of the camera are really stunning. Colors are really on point, which is part of Fujifilm's magic as well, because Fujifilm is known for their film simulations, and it's kind of like color grading your photos and videos in the camera. The imagery is not the sharpest necessarily with this lens, but that's to be expected because when you're shooting at f.95, then only so much of your image is going to be in focus. And honestly, if you have this lens, then I can't see another reason to not be shooting in f.95. You might go to, f1.4 or f2, but those are still pretty shallow, so it is really hard to get all of your image in focus when you're shooting that shallow. But speaking of focus, that is one downside to this lens. This is not an autofocus lens, it is a manual focus lens. For those of us who don't shoot a lot with manual focus focus lenses, this can take a lot of getting used to. I found that I really had to slow down my shooting and be very intentional with the subjects that I was shooting because it was taking me a lot longer to nail my focus. But with that said, before mirrorless cameras came out, I would say that manual focus was a lot more challenging, but a lot of mirrorless cameras, including the Fujifilm X-T3, come equipped with a lot of manual focus assist tools, and this makes it a lot easier to use manual focus lenses and know exactly what in your shot is going to be in focus. So I'm going to talk briefly about some of those manual focus assist tools, but first of all, there are two things you have to do on a Fujifilm camera in particular if you want to shoot with a manual focus lens. First of all, you have to go to the camera body after you attach the lens and go over to the little switch that's down on the bottom and make sure that you switch that over to M for manual. Secondly, you want to power on the camera and turn it over to the LCD screen. Go into Menus, Setup, Button Dial Settings, and scroll over to page 2. And go over to Shoot Without Lens and make sure that this is on. If this is set to off, then your camera won't take a photo and it might seem like it's broken, but just make sure that this is on and you shouldn't have a problem shooting with a manual focus lens. So now on to those manual focus assist functions. There are 2 in particular, but there are 4 total. So I have a separate video coming up in which I'm going to talk about all of the manual focus assist tools on Fujifilm cameras, so stay tuned for that video. But there are 2 in particular that I use a lot whenever I'm shooting in manual focus. The first is focus magnification. When this is enabled, you can press the rear command dial to enable or disable magnification. The focus zoom works when you're shooting in manual focus or autofocus, but it's really handy because you can really see what in your shot is in focus. The second tool that I use is focus peaking. This is something that I also see on Sony mirrorless cameras, and it's really revolutionized how I manual focus my shots. So when this is enabled, there are highlighted colors that highlight the areas of your image that are in focus. There are 4 colors to choose from, and you can change the different strengths, but I like to have the red color because I think it really stands out in the image a lot. But yeah, I love this feature, and without it, I would have a really difficult time with manual focusing. So overall, this is a really great lens, but there are 2 shortcomings in particular. Number 1, this front lens cover is really nice and it's actually made of metal, and when it's attached to the front of the lens, I can feel like a light magnet almost that secures the lens cap and just makes sure that it's fully on the front of the lens. However, this lens cap does not really lock into place, so it can be pretty easy to accidentally have it come off, especially if it's inside of a bag or if you're rough handling it a little. So I would like if there was a lens lock on it. And the second shortcoming is that this lens does not come with a lens hood. And if you shoot in a lot of bright conditions, lens hoods are really helpful for making sure that you don't get lens flares and blocking out certain light from hitting your camera. So I'd appreciate if a lens hood was included, although I do think you can pick up a third-party lens hood if you really need one for the lens. So in conclusion, I think this is a really solid lens from 7 Artisans, and even though I don't have really any manual focus lenses, this is the only one that I have, I think it's a really nice addition to my kit because the ability to shoot at f.95 means that I can shoot practically in the dark. It does take a lot of practice, but again, for the price of just $250, this is a no-brainer lens if you want to try having a manual focus lens in your kit. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Is this a lens that you would pick up for your Fujifilm camera, or would you opt for another type of manual focus lens? Let me know, and stay tuned for the upcoming video in which I'm going to talk more about the manual focus features on Fujifilm cameras. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.